بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما.
So the next possible issue for EHRP neighborship not being established, that is relating to authentication. Now, basically what we do is with the help of authentication, we'll ensure that whatever the updates are coming from the neighbor, and the neighbor is a valid neighbor. Because in the production networks, you can configure authentication, which is optional, to ensure that whatever the routers or the routes being received from the neighbor, they are my valid neighbor and the routes are valid. So if authentication is configured, we have to make sure that the key number and the key string has to match on both the sides. Now this is very important. Okay, so if there is any mismatch of authentication, then probably the EHRP neighborship will not establish. So to verify this, I do have a configurations here. Like I'm going to troubleshoot the neighborship between the router 1 and the router 2. And I did some initial configurations. When I try to establish the neighborship with router 2, you can see the neighbor relationship is not established. So probably before you come to the authentication, you can go ahead and verify the other things, like we need to make sure that the interface is up. So I'm going to confirm that the interface is up, and probably they are on the same subnet, right? And how you can confirm that? I can confirm that by verifying the reachability to the opposite interface. So if I'm able to ping, means most likely they are on the same subnet and the interface is up. And also I need to make sure that they are using the same autonomous system number. And also we need to make sure that the network statements are properly configured. Now these are the prerequisite things we need to check. And as per my configuration, if I say show run section EHRP, and I'm troubleshooting the neighborship between the router 1 and the router 2, so they are using the same AS number and network statement is advertised. Other way is you can also use show IP EHRP interfaces. So AS number 100 and then the S1/0 interface is advertised. So the next thing what we'll do is we'll try to verify the configurations. So mostly when you, if you doubt that there is some kind of authentication, then probably you need to verify with in show IP protocols, probably it's not showing anything, but you can verify with something like show run interface. You go to the interface and verify the configurations. So whenever you see these additional commands which are relevant to authentication, if you see this configuration, then you need to make sure that the opposite side also it is enabled and the key has to match. So according to this, it is using the keychain R1. And how to verify the keychain? Show keychain command will show you what is the key number and the key string will be used. Now for successful authentication, we need to make sure that the key number must match on both the sides. So the key, you can see key number 1 and the password is Cisco123 CSISO. Maybe it's a spelling mistake. We'll try to verify that as well. So let's go to router 2, and on the router 2, I'll just confirm if the authentication is configured or not. And you can see clearly the authentication is missing here. So if authentication is configured on one side, and if it is not configured on the other side, then probably the neighborship is not going to establish. So either you remove the authentication on the router 1, or you configure on the router 2 as well. So what I'll do is here, I'll try to configure on the router 2 also. Interface S1/0. But before that, I also need to check whether the keychain, these things are already configured or not. So there is a key number and the key string, which is already pre-configured, means it's already configured. So I just need to enable under the interface. So what is the command? The same commands, because I'm using the keychain, I think R1, the same. So I'll copy paste this. So for additional verifications, you can use show IP EHR debug packets, debug EHRP neighbors. Probably you can use this command or specific things. And in my scenario, let me undebug because I don't want to use here. So in my case, what I'm expecting is the neighborship should establish. So I'll try to shut down the interface, and then make it up to start the EHRP neighborship. So I'm expecting the neighborship debug IP EHRP packets. I think this is a better command to verify. Debug IP EHRP. Or you can specifically use this one. Can be more specific neighbor as well. Now, probably I recommend you to use this command, debug EHRP packets. So you can see here at the back end, it is sending the debug messages. Let me undebug this because undebug all. Now here, what I can see here is there is a mismatch of authentication. So in case if you are not sure, like your neighborship is not establishing, but you have some issue at the back end, you can always use this command, debug EHRP packets. And here you can see it is sending a hello message, and probably there is a mismatch of authentication, and it is ignoring the packet from the neighbor because of the invalid authentication. So either it shows invalid authentication or missing authentication. There are specific debug commands you can refer to, like if I use debug EHRP packets, so this is the debug output when the authentication is missing on the neighbor. So you may see something like this, and if there is any mismatch of the password, then probably you will see this invalid authentication output. So accordingly, we can confirm what is the issue here. So in our case, both the sites we have configured the neighborship, but there is a mismatch of key number or the key string. So if you verify here, the key number is 1, and on the router 2, if I say show keychain, you can see it is Cisco 123, but on the opposite side, it is not Cisco 123. So again, keychain name can be anything, it can be different, but we need to make sure that the key number and the key string has to match. So probably what I can do is, if I verify the configuration here, so I need to reconfigure this, where I'm going to remove that key string, and I'll try to configure the key string correctly. So how to configure? Key 1, and then key string is going to be Cisco 123. So make sure that you don't use space, because space is also a character which is not displayed. So before you press enter, there's no space here. So on both the sides, the configuration is done, and you can see the neighborship has come up between the two neighbors. And if you can see here, probably most of the time you don't really use debug commands. But let's say if the neighborship is not establishing and you're not able to figure out what might be the problem, then the debug EHRP packets will be very much useful. So when we are troubleshooting this EHRP neighborship, and if you doubt that there might be an issue with authentication, we need to make sure that the key number and the key string has to match. Of course, not the keychain. So keychain name can be anything. Like you can use the keychain name here R1, here R2, even though I have used same on both the sides. But that can be different. But these two options should match. And on both the sides, you must have authentication enabled. Like there are two issues we fixed. On the router 2, there was missing authentication commands here. So we configured them. And the second issue was there was a mismatch of the text, the password on both the sides. So we fixed that one as well.